Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our first session of the fall, and we look forward to being able to share a lot of information about the Bush School with you. This overview session is what we're called the melting pot, has a lot of great information, but there's a lot of information here. So please bear with us as I cover a lot of aspects about the school, but I will go into more detail with some follow-up sessions. So we have some that will come up with each of the degree programs that we offer, as well as having Dylan and some other students come in and talk about life as a student here. Matt from Career Services will come in and talk about the internship and career aspects. So a lot more to come with financial aid, all of that. But today I'm just going to get started with some general information. So thank you guys for joining us. And we will for sure post this at the end once I get it transcripted. So one request that I have for you is just be sure that when you get a chance, chat with us, send some questions. And as those come up and I can see them, I will be sure to answer them. So let's get started with the first slide. So I'm Catherine Meyer. I'm a Director of Admissions and Recruitment here at the Bush School. Been here about 17 years, so have a lot of experience under my belt here at the school and watched it grow. Matt Upton also has a lot of great experience here at the Bush School. He is probably joining us around halfway through. And we'll talk a little bit about his section with the student services and how we support our students through the leadership and programs, as well as the internship and some funding options we have for that. And then Dylan Armstrong is our admissions GA, our grad assistant. He is one of our current MPSA second year students, and he will kind of follow up at the end of this. But again, both of them will have their own presentations later this fall. So we'll start with the agenda with a little bit about the location, where we are located in Bryan College Station community. We'll also cover a little bit about the academic offerings, just giving the highlights of what we have, how you can combine them with certificates, the Capstone project element that's in place of a thesis element that some schools have. We'll talk a little bit about the admissions process, the timeline involved in that, some of our stats and what that looks like, how you might compare to a current applicant, the degree costs and the aid that we provide to students. We'll also have Matt start talking a little bit about our school resources and the career services, and then Dylan will come in about the student insights, about getting involved, some of the expectations, and the benefits of going to a school like the Bush School. So we'll start with just a quick overview of where we're located. Those that aren't from Texas may not be as familiar with Bryan College Station area, but we've marked that with the big star here on this map. So we are located near 5 major metropolitan areas. I know sometimes people don't consider Waco necessarily, but because of the popularity of a certain HGTV network show, people now know who Waco is and where they are on this map. But it's Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, Waco, Austin, and San Antonio. All are major metropolitan areas that provide a lot of resources for our students, particularly in terms of the internship opportunities and the job opportunities. There's just a lot of economic booming aspects about being in a town that is located near all of these areas. And also the diversity of being able to go and join in some of the activities, not during COVID, of course, that are happening in Houston and San Antonio and Austin and heading up to Dallas-Fort Worth. So great location and aspects of a college town. But our community and campus, sometimes people don't really know how big is College Station, but we're 2 sister cities. So our population is over 273,000 people just in this area. And we're consistently ranked in economic and social categories that talk about the greatness of the economy and the quality of life with a small college town. Our cities are growing. It's always growing. There's always construction going on with new apartment buildings and new restaurants. So it's a great place also that they're now encouraging people to come and retire and enjoy the amenities of a college and all the activities that they typically hold. But Bryan College Station is just a great place to live, great family resources for people that are coming in with community, with school-aged children, as well as the mix of the students that are coming in for undergrad and graduate. So keep in mind, A&M is a huge university. We're home of the Aggies. We have the largest campus enrollment in the US right now with nearly 70,000 students. About 64,000 of those are here in College Station. Again, this is pre-COVID. This was using some of last year's numbers. I'm not sure how many are actually enrolling here on campus right now, but we are active. We do have hybrid classes where people are coming in class right now with a mixture of some Zoom courses, or there are students who are just doing all their classes online. So there's some options for that. But nearly 15,000 of our students at Texas A&M are graduate students. So there's a great sense of community with both international students coming in for the engineering programs, the science programs. But the Bush School is the smallest school at Texas A&M. So we have a little bit of a niche area there in terms of being able to really get to know our students, but they get the benefit of using the Texas A&M resources. So part of the rankings that I've highlighted here are actually Texas A&M rankings, but we're 10th in National University and 12th in Affordable Elite. That is for Washington Monthly, which is a resource that considers service, research, and social mobility. So it's not just necessarily faculty members who rank a college based on name. It is about several different factors that I think play into a school like the Bush School, who does have so much of that service-minded students. But we're also 18th among public universities in higher education for the Wall Street Journal, and a best value college in Money Magazine. So a lot of great resources coming from a university the size and the scope of Texas A&M. So even more center in this, we're going to talk about the Bush Presidential Library Center, because we're part of a complex here at Texas A&M. This picture's a little bit older. The green space that's above the buildings now at the top right side of that is now all gravel with parking spaces, which we needed when we became an SEC school for tailgating and parking for the different events that they have here now. But we are home of the Allen building, which is the right-hand building. It now houses the Bush School and a couple other entities from Texas A&M. But we just now garnered extra space in this building and have taken over most of the first floor, almost all, if not all of the second floor, and maybe a smidgen of the third floor. So we're part of the Presidential Conference Center, is the building next to us, that houses the Foundation and the Poli Sciences and Economics Library. So A&M is actually hosting some classes next door using that Presidential Conference Center space because we needed some bigger rooms. The Bush School is using one of the smaller rooms over there, the Presidential Dining Room, for holding some of their classes. So it is a complex that you can wander around through and visit. The George H.W. Bush Presidential Library Museum is the building on the far left. So you can see we do have parking here, we do have amenities, and then there is a bus that runs the route that takes students to main campus should they be taking classes in other departments and need that access. But we just enjoy the beauty of our space here. So what is the Bush School of Government and Public Service? Let's talk a little bit about specifically us being just a graduate school. No other program here at Texas A&M has that same label, but we just educate students through our graduate certificates and through the master's degree levels. So we opened in 1997 when we did get the Presidential Library and Museum. That was part of the agreement to open a school in his name. And we now have just over 2,000 alumni. So we're building our own networks, but we also utilize heavily the Texas A&M networks. That is just part of the beauty of being an Aggie. And that greatly helps with the internship and the opportunities for employment. In 2020, a little bit different for enrollment this year, we actually had around 90 students in each of the MPSA and MIA, which is typically our goal. But with COVID being in place, we did lose some students that decided they were going to either postpone enrollment or were just going to delay by a semester if that was something to do with visas. So we ended up with 79 MPSA students, 81 MIA students, 6 for our MIP, which I'll go through all these acronyms in a few minutes. And we've got about 370 students online through our offerings through that, which I'll go through those in just a moment. But we are a program that is preparing students for careers in nonprofits, international NGOs. A larger portion for the federal government comes from the Master of International Affairs, state and local government, government contracting positions in the private industry. There's more than just these that entail, but these are usually the sectors that you'll see most students head into. So we'll talk about the on-campus degrees. Those are the ones that Ashley and I work with through admissions. And that's what most of this slideshow will cover. But we'll just start right there with Master of Public Service and Administration. That is kind of the signature program that began the Bush School. It is a 2-year, 48 credit hour degree. Most students are doing 12 hours each semester, even though 9 hours is a full class load for a grad student. We do a little bit more than that because our degree is a little bit longer, getting a little more in depth with it. It does require an internship unless students come in with a few more years of work experience and they can get that waived. It does require a capstone course working for a client. Students will have a say-so in who they choose, but I've got a slide on that later. And then you can start, for instance, with a certificate and transfer up to 12 credit hours from that certificate into the Master of Public Service. So for instance, if a student were to start and test the waters with a Master of Public Service and go, I'm going to take some of the classes out of the nonprofit management certificate, they could then double count those credits also towards the master's degree. It doesn't slow the program down at all, sorry, it doesn't speed it up at all, because you still have a year-long capstone, so you're still going to take 2 full years to graduate, but maybe you do 9 hours each semester instead of the 12. Or you take a semester doing an internship in the fall or spring instead of being here. So it adds a little bit more flexibility for some of the students. But you can also, keep in mind, take some elective courses online, maybe through our Executive Master of Public Service, which is an online degree. But you'll have to consult with your advisor, and you also have to realize the classes that you take through the online aspect are going to have an additional fee. That's just built into how they generate money. But the core courses have to be taken on campus. So if you're living away from College Station, maybe you're from Houston or an outside area and want to mix the courses, you could do 2 courses on campus here and maybe do a couple of courses online so you didn't have to drive here multiple times a week. But that is an option that you can look into further if that's of interest to you. The Master of International Affairs is also a 2-year, 48 credit hour degree. It requires its students have foreign language ability, that you have to pass a spoken test of a language of your choice before you can graduate. So we will be asking questions about foreign language ability, not that you have to have mastered it before you enroll with us, but we want to make sure that you're working on it, because you will not be able to graduate unless you pass that exam. And I have a slide that will cover that in a little bit as well. But it's basically going to be the conversational level. So it's intermediate low with ACTFL, which is the testing company we use. The MIA also requires an internship or language study, also requires a capstone course working for a client. Only yours now is a semester instead of the year-long that the MPSA does. And also you can transfer up to 12 credit hours from the Certificate in Advanced International Affairs and the Certificate in Homeland Security, because those are the 2 that kind of mesh with it in terms of the tracks and concentrations. There are 2 additional opportunities with the on-campus degrees, with a Master of Public Health, which is new for us within this last year. This is a 3-year degree. It takes 72 total credit hours that you're splitting between the Master of Public Health here on campus through Public Health and our Master of International Affairs. So you have to apply to both departments, be accepted to both departments, but you will start with the Public Health and their master's degree, spend your first 1.5 years with them, meaning that any funding or opportunities you'll have to coordinate with them in the time that you're serving in their classes. And then we will have told you in your enrollment letter what your funding would apply the 1.5 years that you're with us. So we do provide funding like we do in our MPSA and MIAs, also for this MIA-MPH. but our funding only occurs in the time that you're enrolled with us. And then we also have a Master of International Policy, and brand new, starting in the spring, we'll have a Master of International Policy that will start in DC. But keep in mind, this is a 1-year, 30 credit hour degree, but it requires 6 years of professional international experience. So broadly defined, but we're really looking for that mid-career professional coming back, maybe from military or from some work that they've done and are coming back and need a shorter program. It can take 6 hours of online courses. Most of the times we're really encouraging, most of our applicants look like they're doing fall entry, and so they do fall 12 hours, spring 12 hours, and then 6 hours over the summer online if they want that. But it does not require an internship, does not require a capstone, does not require foreign language, but it also does not provide the scholarship aid that we normally do. So we're counting on students to look for their own FAFSA loans or use their military benefits. So we do have an online degree here at the Bush School, and that is our Executive Master of Public Service and Administration. It does offer a number of tracks: nonprofit management, public management, and homeland security. But it's a little bit shorter. It's 39 graduate credit hours. We're expecting, because some of these are working professionals, that it's going to take 2 to 3 years for them to complete those hours. It does require a bachelor's degree, and you have to have 5 years of full-time public service experience with 3 years at that mid to upper management level. So you do have to have experience under your belt, have been out with your degree already and working. They're not necessarily going to count those undergrad work that you did while you were in school. So give yourself some time for that, and come back and look at that online degree. Applications, however, are accepted for fall, spring, and summer entry, much like we do with our MIP executive program. And you can transfer up to 12 credit hours from one of these certificates, the CHLS, CNPM, or Public Management, PBMG. And then courses for this degree are 100% online, with the exclusion of you are required for 2 weeks total to come and take classes in residence so that you can interact with our faculty, meet some of your fellow students. And that's 1 week each year for at least 2 of the years that you're enrolled with us. In fact, I think they have residency week starting next week for one of our classes for the fall. Now, the other option I've talked a little bit about were those graduate certificates. So keep in mind, these can be completed online, on campus, or a mixture of both, depending on how and where you find yourself. They also have applications accepted for the fall, spring, and summer entry. So regularly, we do have some students who are from Texas A&M University, who are undergrads, who go ahead and start this in their senior year. Or you have students who graduated off cycle. Maybe they graduate with a degree with a bachelor's in December, and they need something in the spring to bide their time before they're ready to enroll into a full-time program. And the certificates fill that gap very well. They're from 12 to 15 hours to complete them, and they do offer a number of these concentrations that you can develop a specialty, and many of these will align with some of the tracks and concentrations that we offer in our full-time degree. But you will need to work with the online advisors. You will need to apply for their financial aid and see what you can use for benefits. But it's a great option in pursuing these certificates and maybe mixing them with a Bush School degree. And then you've got 2 credentials, a certificate and a master of something. So it does work very well for a lot of students. So focusing on the Master of Public Service and Administration, they have their own tracks and elective concentrations. So you are required to fulfill a track: public management, public policy analysis, or nonprofit management. And there are a number of classes you will have to take to fulfill that track. And then they also offer concentrations if you so choose. Many of our students do want to develop a specialty, maybe working with just cybersecurity issues. And so they'll take at least 3 courses in an area and develop that specialty. But they are elective. You don't have to do this, or you can design your own individual emphasis area. We've had a number of different options of people coming through, and maybe they want to work on political speech writing, or maybe they want to work with agricultural policy. So there's any number of different avenues you can go with this by working with your faculty advisor and in just discussing with some of your fellow students what they're taking on campus and how you can mix and match those classes to develop your own niche that complements maybe your undergrad degree. But you can see all those tracks and concentrations there. One new one that we changed the name of this year was now, instead of just security, policy and management is now called Homeland Security and National Defense. So that's a new one that just popped up in our titles this year. The Master of International Affairs, these are their tracks and concentrations, but I also included the MIA-MPH because, again, you kind of already have your niche and where you're focused on, but you can take classes out of these concentrations without necessarily developing a concentration, but it shows you just the depth of the kinds of classes that we're offering. And the same thing with the Master of International Policy. They are required for a track, but those concentrations are completely elective. So they can take a mixed match of courses, or they can zero in on a particular area and develop a specialty. But our tracks are International Development and Economic Policy and National Security and Diplomacy. And then from that, you have to take 2 concentrations in the MIA and at least 3 courses within that to develop that specialty. So if you're in National Security and Diplomacy, for instance, I put that one in red. Any of the ones that are listed in red under the concentrations fulfill that tracks area, because one of your concentration has to be tied to your track. Your second concentration can be any of them, which could include even the regional studies that we offer here. And I'll further say on those regional studies, the Middle East, Europe, and China are our main areas, but we're starting to see a little bit of development of that Latin America focus as well. But notice the new ones here this year, if you've looked at our website, pandemic preparedness and disaster response is now an option, and we took out the nuclear security. You can still do some of that under some of the other headings with defense. But very robust, very much able to pick and choose how you want to put these together because you've got so many, 10 electives to choose from, and 6 of them have to be tied to these concentrations. So as far as the on-campus highlights, just remember you can customize your degree here. So use those electives, use those tracks and concentrations. You have a core of 4 to 7 courses depending on your degree, but you've also then have that 9 to 12 electives to mix and match. And that can include courses elsewhere at Texas A&M. So you really can develop something that complements your focus. And you're going to receive faculty and career advising from our staff along the way. So you can really make sure you're taking the right kinds of courses to get you to the path and the career that you're wanting. And I already said this before, but you can align 4 of your electives to correspond with one of the certificates or vice versa to develop an additional credential. So just remember that a max of 12 credit hours can count towards the MPSA and MIA, and you can only max out with 6 for the MIP. So the professional internship, you can apply your studies after the first year with an internship that you choose and work and apply for. So we will provide leads through our career services office. We regularly bring employers on and offer talks through employers, many of them through Zoom right now, that you can find out what those interests are and what they look like, but follow up with the ones that are most meaningful for you, and then see what pans out in terms of placement for that summer and what you're wanting to pursue. So MIA students have an option of language immersion if they choose to do that instead. Many of the students start to get a little panicky if they haven't been able to work on language like they had hoped. And so that language immersion just becomes a little bit more important at that time. And so they'll pursue language study, usually abroad, but there are a number of different schools that will be here in the US that offer language development. And then the team-based Capstone project, you're wrapping up your learning experience, the classroom learning, with a project where you're working with your classmates. So you'll have a number of different options of choosing a capstone project from a list of maybe 8 to 12 different topics. And you'll know who's the professor that is guiding that, what's the topic, and who the client is. And then you can rank order your preferences. And then you're doing that project for a year long for the MPSA or 1 semester for the MIA. Some of those team-based consulting projects are listed here with this client. So we've got federal, I'm just gonna let you read those choices, state level, local level, a number of nonprofits keep coming back to us to do some work for them. And then the private companies, we have a number of those also. So as I mentioned before, you will have a listing of those and get to rank order which ones you prefer to do for your study. Sometimes those are also tied with organizations that regularly hire our students. So if that's the case, then you might be able to get a leg up on the employment process. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen on occasion. So as far as the application requirements, and I wanted to take a minute, see if I can find a note if we had any questions. But I will come back to that in just a second. Application requirements. So Master of Public Service, International Affairs, the MPH degrees, those all have a priority deadline of December 15th. We've moved that up. If you've noticed in the past, that's been January, but we need a little head start. We're getting more applications and need time to work on these over the holiday in order to have them ready for faculty reviews in January. So we're now pushing a little bit earlier deadline. Hopefully most of you can get your materials into us either during the semester or right after your finals end up happening in December, and get those to us with a hard deadline soon to follow in January 15th for the MIA, and then February 1st for the MPH, just because they've got a little bit later deadline. And then we've pushed the February 15th as the hard deadline for the MPSA. I do want to point out that we often will push back the hard deadline if we feel like there are still really strong candidates that are contacting us that are, well, that we have slots available for, that we feel like we can make the room for it. It's a little bit more eligible to do that with the MPSA. MIA tends to be pretty fast and furious, and we usually fill the class pretty quickly with them. So for MIA, make sure you're on time with that December 15th or January 15th deadlines for sure. MPSA, sometimes we have a little bit more leeway. But required pieces for you guys, the online app and fee, but notice we are now using a new application for the MPSA and MIA, and that is the Unicast app, which does mean the fee, unfortunately, went up a little bit. So it's $89 for domestic students now. But you're going to get that submitted, and then you'll have transcripts uploaded. Remember, there's a difference between unofficial and official, but all that's written out on our website. You will have a statement of purpose, a resume. We've got a sample resume on the website you can look at. International experience essay for the MIA, which is talking a little bit more about what you've done for travel or language or courses or readings. Just need a little bit more input in that kind of aspect. We will need 3 letters of rec. Be sure that you're working on those now. You don't want to have submitted all your stuff, but still trying to nag someone in the middle of the semester to get those turned in for you. So work on those letters of rec right now. English proficiency test scores, it's possible we'll need those for students that are from non-speaking English countries. And then new for this year for both programs together, starting at the right time, the GRE test is optional for most of you. Specifically for the MPSA, it is now optional for everyone, unless, and this is true of anyone who feels like they're a good test taker, that GRE maybe can make up for something lacking in your file. But you're always welcome to submit the GRE. We're just now giving that option of making it optional for most of you if you choose not to do it. However, the Master of International Affairs and the MIA-MPH degree, they are requiring that GRE if your GPA is below a 3.2, and that is not rounding it off. So as long as you're a 3.2 and above, it's optional unless you want to submit it. But if you're below that, we are requiring that GRE test. So just make sure you plan accordingly for that and have scores submitted by one of those 2 deadlines, hopefully by December 15th. Now, the executive level Master of International Policy, it admits 3 times a year. So it's a fall deadline of April 15th, spring for October, and summer is March. They also have that online app and fee. but a little bit different. They're still using the Applied Texas, at least for the next deadline for spring. And then after that, they will change over in the summer and the fall for the UNICAS application. Also need transcript, statement, resume, 2 letters of rec for you guys. If you're from a foreign speaking country, you will have to have English proficiency test scores if you didn't meet that requirement in other ways. And the GRE is encouraged if your GPA is below a 3.0. So as far as application steps and timelines, remember that priority deadline is now hitting in December. And then the hard deadlines will follow either in January or February, depending on the program. But our faculty start to review the applications in January. By February and March, we start conducting the interviews. Now, usually this is the entire month of February. Every applicant that we move forward for that first review will be interviewed by typically 2 faculty, sometimes a faculty and a staff member. And those opportunities, we're first going to try to get you here for the interview conference weekend. We will look to see if that is even an option of having it in place this year in person. If we're able to set something up with some spacing distances, we still like to try to handle that way. But if not, we will always have those Zoom options and conduct those interviews ahead of time in February. But the MPSA will have that weekend for February 19th and 20th, and the MIA will be held February 26th and 27th. If you want to put that on your calendar, we'll make that decision of whether or not we can hold them in person closer to that January timeline. But once we conduct all those interviews and have a little bit of assessment with our students, then we start to hit that March decisions where we're meeting together as committees and making both admissions and aid decisions. So when you're getting a letter from us from the master's degrees, you're getting a yes, you're admitted, and here's how much funding you have from us, so that you can make that decision quickly as long as you've got all the other schools with their information too. And then April 15th is a typical response deadline. So you'll need to let all your schools know by April 15th if you're planning to enroll or not. But all that information is on our website under the admissions degree sections. And in case you're kind of wondering, stack up next to people, we've got competitive enrollment, we've got incoming stats with MPSA GPAs of 3.4, GREs of 303, MIA GPAs of 3.68 with a GRE of 309. But merit, experience, and fit, those kinds of things are what we talk about and assess for the scholarship level. So anything you can do to convey your strengths through internships and coursework that you've done and work experience and travel, all those things can play a role in what we consider that experience and benefit of bringing you to the classroom, and hopefully can relay that with how much money you can get. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But the small school environment, we mentioned this before, we try for about 90 students a year, but we're typically somewhere between that 80 to 90 per department. That's for the MPSA and MIA. The executive level MIP is usually closer to 10 students. It's meant to be much smaller. MPH element is brand new, so we will have our first student who will enroll with us in the spring, but we're anticipating between 2 to maybe 6 to 7 students in different enrollment each spring, because it takes a year and a half, so each spring to come into us once it gets rolling. But we have average class sizes of about 16 students per. Our classes typically are just more of a round robin, where you have a big conference table and students sit around that. We have some traditional classroom sizes as well, but this gives that interaction where you can talk and debate and discuss in a much more interactive manner. But you're learning from seasoned practitioners and research professors. So we have a number of professors. This picture right here is Professor Jim Olson in our International Affairs, who leads our intelligence studies, or former CIA officer. We've got former diplomats, we've got former managers from nonprofits, other professional fields. And so they're talking about their experiences and really giving you that insight of what it's like to be in that practical side of the job, not just theoretical. So as far as our financial awards, and again, I'm specifically narrowing in now just on the MPSA and the MIA. which are our 2 flagship programs. But 100% of our incoming students this last year received, if they were full-time students, they received at least scholarships between $1,000 and $30,000 per year. Those full rides at the $30,000 are hard to get. They're competitive. We make the nominations for those. Right now, there's not a separate application that you apply for that. But about 2/3 of our students are receiving either a $3,000 per year or a $5,000 per year. So if you can receive more than that, then that's fantastic. But I usually tell people just plan on somewhere around that $5,000 per year mark, because that's where the majority of our students sit in both those programs. You can compete for graduate assistantships, but only in year 2. We don't want our students coming in and working 20 hours a week while they're adjusting to classes. So in that reason, we've kind of adjusted this where you can only get scholarship, but you can compete for a grad assistantship in year 2, and it's primarily based on your grades or your fit with research for faculty. But if you get a GA position, you have to give up your first year scholarship. It's no double dipping in that, unless you receive a GA position outside of the Bush School. And in that case, it's not hitting us twice. So you're welcome to look at GA positions around campus. And we also have internship scholarships available for those that receive an internship with no pay. So that's a great aspect. And I think I'll get Matt to cover that in just a minute. But basically, our end value for state rates is about $13,200 per year in tuition and fees before the scholarship hits. So if you can receive a $10,000 scholarship, most of your cost is paid for with tuition and fees. But most of you are going to have your own living cost. That's about $20,000, $21,000 a year. Some of our scholarships are full rides, close to it, so that can be covered, but they're just few and far between for those. MIP student, if you're interested in that, then you're looking at about a $16,500 per year for Texas residents and just over $31,000 for non-residents. But it's only a 1-year cost, so you're saving on the living costs with that as well. All right, Matt, I see that you're on. So I'm going to look at some of the questions we have while you're speaking, and then I'll come back in a little bit. But if you can start talking about student enhancement and cover the next 3 slides, it's on to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Catherine, and thanks to everybody for being on today. I'll go through some of the student enhancement information and then can also answer any of your questions about the internship program or things like that. Obviously, one of the things that we believe is really important is that we help students become well-rounded. And so we have a leadership program that allows you the opportunity to learn additional leadership skills, also learn more about yourself through both StrengthsFinder and through Myers-Briggs type indicator. That information is also used to enhance your group activity work or your group work when you're working on team projects, especially in that 2nd year for your Capstone project. Really being in a position to know who the other teammates are on your team, what their strengths are, how you're going to work together, what their personality types are, and how those things will influence the way that you do work. Many of our faculty members will have our leadership, our assistant director for the leadership program, Holly Kasperbauer, come in and lead a session with the teams just so that they understand a little bit more about themselves. Your first year is really getting to know about yourself and then also thinking about how do you prepare for that summer internship to apply the things that you've been learning, both informally through programs like our leadership program and then also in the classroom. We also have a writing program within the school. This program is really focused more so on helping faculty make the most out of writing in their classroom. And so what that results in for you as a student is that oftentimes the director of our program, Cindy Razor, will come into classrooms and talk to you about how do you frame your papers, how do you write. It is not a writing, we do not have an editor for your papers, although the university does have a writing center, which also has a number of resources available for graduate students. And I know they just announced a number of additional resources that they've added for graduate students. Catherine's alluded to some of this earlier. Our research institutes and research centers have a number of speakers, even this year, even into last spring, and then through this fall, and possibly even into this spring. Many of the speakers have been able to shift to online speakers to do Zoom sessions. And so really, our students aren't missing out on those opportunities to hear from national and regional speakers on different topics throughout the week. International travel during a normal year, a non-pandemic year, we have students who do study abroad programs during the kind of the winter break between the fall and the spring semester. And then again in May, there's typically a couple of international trips that students can go on, study abroad, and get academic credit for that. And then a number of our students do international internships or language immersions and language abroad, which takes us into the next requirement. And Catherine has already mentioned most of this. Many of our students will opt to do a language immersion so that they can come back and take that language exam in the International Affairs program and meet that requirement. In the public administration program, you don't have the option of doing a language immersion, but it doesn't mean that you have to do a domestic internship. Some of our public administration students do international internships, whether that's with the State Department or with other NGOs and things like that. So that gives you an idea of some of the student enhancement. Catherine, I'll let you move to the next slide. So our employment information, one of the things that we work really hard to do is to provide career services that are valuable to all of our students. Obviously, some employers recruit more heavily than others. Nonprofit organizations don't always have staff or budgets to recruit. The nice thing about if you want to try to find something good out of the pandemic is that most employers have learned to shift and do their recruiting electronically and do their recruiting through Zoom sessions and other online virtual sessions. So it's actually been really good for us. We're just in our second full week of classes here at A&M. We had that one short week that started on the Wednesday, but last week and this week we've had almost every day we've had employer information sessions. Most of them last week and this week have been focused on those that require a security clearance. So Defense Intelligence Agency, the military command centers like Northcom and Southcom and some of those places, CIA, FBI, DIA, but then there are also other organizations, some city governments that have recruited here. Actually, the city of Navasota is just down the road about 30 minutes, a small municipality, and they've already been here to do an information session. U.S. Government Accountability Office has already done an information session. Some think tanks like the Cato Institute have already done one or are in the process of doing one this week. So those, again, are virtual sessions right now because of where we are in the world. But you can see from an employment standpoint, you can look at both the public administration and international affairs. The breakdown in public administration, our three top areas that students go into work are in state and local government, nonprofit organizations, and then federal government. And you would, just to give you a better picture, always combine that federal government contractor number together because our government contractors are historically federal government contractors. So you can see that. And then in the international affairs program, you can see that it's much more weighted towards federal government work, obviously because of that national security focus. So anywhere from 40 to 70%. And again, if you add up both the federal government and the government contractor, over 50% of our international affairs graduates are going into work for the US federal government. Sometimes they are also going into work for their home government if they're not from the US, but that gives you an idea of what that looks like. We do offer a number of career workshops. First year students are required to do 5 required career workshops this year, which we have pushed all online. And so those can be done asynchronously throughout your first several weeks of school, but there are some deliverables due, like a resume that we have to review, and you have to do some networking outreach to some of our former students and some of our employer contacts. So those are just a sampling of things, putting together a LinkedIn profile. If you want to know where our students are going to work, either for their jobs or internships, and they really are interchangeable, this gives you an idea. Federal government, we talked about some of those intelligence agencies, but we've also got people who are going to work for USAID, Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, U.S. Government Accountability Office, or GAO, state and local. You'll see some Texas municipalities and some Texas counties in here, City of Austin, Houston, Harris County, but you also see places like the Maryland Department of Legislative Services or the state of Utah. I mean, you'll see Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. So our students, when they graduate, they aren't always staying here in Texas. So if your desire is to go outside of Texas, plenty of opportunities, and two ways to really do that. One is that we are really well connected with our former students. They like to help. And so that's the first thing that we encourage our current students to do, is to reach out to former students, and we can help you do that. The second is the Aggie Network. So for those of you that are not familiar with Texas A&M, we have over 500,000 living alumni. And so that is something that adds to the Aggie Network and allows you to reach out to other people who maybe didn't graduate from the Bush School but graduated from A&M, equally interested in helping you as an Aggie to be successful in your career. And then we are also well connected into our professional associations, both NASPA for public administration and APSIA for international affairs. So we work with our career colleagues across other schools. And you'll probably hear the same thing if you talk to the Career Services Office, is other schools that you're looking at for these graduate programs. We work well. So if there's something that I don't know about a specific employer or sector, then I can reach out to them and find that information out. And then nonprofit organizations, you can see there's a whole host of opportunities there, from local places like the Brazos Valley Food Bank to national organizations like American Cancer Society or St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Samaritan's Purse, Teach for America, all of the ones that you would think of, and probably a number that you wouldn't think of that are smaller nonprofits that are working in different areas. And then we do have some students who are going to work in the private sector. Sometimes they're doing work like consulting work at Accenture and Bank of America. Other times they're doing work for government contractors like Booz Allen Hamilton, Chemonics, and some of those other government contractors there. Catherine, I'll let you go to the next slide. So then there are opportunities for involvement in student organizations. And I think this is the point where I get to hand it off to Dylan. Dylan is our graduate assistant for our recruiting and admissions team, but he is also the president of our Student Government Association. And so I think this is my opportunity. If I'm wrong, Dylan, you can just tell me that you want me to cover it. But I think Dylan will be able to give you a much better perspective of what it's like to be a student here and what opportunities there are to be involved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Upton. I really appreciate the nice introduction. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the different opportunities for you guys to get involved with the Bush School community outside of the classroom setting. First one, Public Service Organization, is one of the big organizations at the Bush School. Really helps to get the Bush School students involved in the community, obviously much more involved during non-COVID times. But it's a really good way to, really hone in on that public service as a noble calling and being able to really give back to the community in which we reside. The Student Government Association, as Dr. Upton stated, I am the current president of. We have 8 different committees within SGA, and we do things such as host intramurals, which is where you'll see Bushwhacker athletics at the bottom. It's just so, Bush School students are able to participate on the same intramural teams. We also, for the Aggie games, we'll have a nice little tailgate where Bush School students are able to come out and have a little fun before football games. We also do a lot of different fundraising and host just a plethora of events through social and traditions. We also have good old Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which really focuses on helping to foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment here at the Bush School. And then the Alexander Hamilton Society is a newer organization here at the Bush School, but it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that really focuses on having a constructive debate regarding political matters. It's really interesting, a really interesting organization Ambassadors is another really, really large group here at the Bush School. During non-COVID times, they work the different events for when we have different speakers come in, and they get a lot of really cool, like close one-on-one experience, and like just a lot of time that not every student gets to spend with the speakers when they come in. And as I had previously mentioned, Bushwhacker Athletics is our athletic team here at the Bush School. We're involved in a ton of different intramurals, and we also each year play the LBJ school in a softball game for the Dillo Cup, and they help organize that. And then overall, a recap of why the Bush School. The staff members and the professors here at the Bush School, they are really, really passionate about what they're teaching us and wanting us to be successful. I really couldn't speak highly enough about the level of access your professors will give you and just how much they overall care about you. The specialized concentrations, we obviously have concentrations already set up, but you are able to craft a concentration to whatever specific policy area you're really interested in. We do a lot of teamwork here, so you really will work in a collaborative environment, which is very much how the working world will be for us. And then the consulting projects with industry leaders will be through your Capstone, which is a fantastic opportunity. Yeah, the internships are another great way to get some more exposure to everything. And overall, the school's just, it's a fantastic program, and it's extremely affordable. And we have the pleasure of being at a great public university here, being at A&M's campus. And yeah.
So thank you, Dylan. I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, but I did have a couple of chat questions I just in general wanted to answer. One of them was asking if the GRE is also optional for international students for the International Affairs program. And my response to that is yes, it is. It's a little more difficult to discern what a GPA is, though, converted. We're using that mark of a 3.2 out of 4.0. So if a student is having trouble understanding what a GPA looks like, they may have to work with us individually with that. But if in doubt, it's better to supply it than to not and have needed it. So just prepare accordingly for that. Another question was about how many applications does the Bush School receive for these programs? The two that I'm going to talk about are the MPSA and the MIA. And I'm just using kind of an average number over the years because this obviously does fluctuate. But usually we're somewhere close to about 200 apps for the MPSA that we're choosing to have a class of 90 out of. And the IA tends to be a little bit more competitive with about 250 to 280 applications for their 90 slots. MIP and MIA-MPH are a little bit different because they're smaller programs, but you're talking about a handful in terms of those, maybe about 15. So that answers those two questions. And then I believe there was one more. What makes an outstanding Bush School applicant, and what kind of advice for applicants to stand out? I will tell you that's going to be covered more in depth in the admissions webinar that we'll have on Tuesday, the 13th of October, because I know I can go into more depth about what you can do to sell your background and your story through your personal statement and things like that. But obviously, the more that you've done and can convey that you are adding value to the classroom, I think that's going to bode well for faculty being able to say, yes, we want this student. Not only do they have solid grades and they have a record of doing well, but they also bring these type of experiences or the travel or that passion for the service. Those can help you stand out. And as far as a question specifically about, and this is another track question that came in, about a university, if you've attended more than one university for your undergrad, how do we average the GPA? We typically are going by your graduating GPA. So if you're coming from Texas A&M or Texas State or Duke University, it's whatever GPA that's showing up on that graduating transcript. But that is always a good question to ask if in doubt. By sending an email to us, and we do have a separate email that is uniquely for the applicants. You can, I'm going to go ahead and spin this over for real quick and I'll come back to it in a second, but you can contact us at the bushschool.admissions@tamu.edu. That's the email that I will work with and handle for the prospect. But when you're ready to convert to the applications, we have another email that's called bushschoolapplications@tamu.edu. And it is all over the website through the admissions section so that you can tell that. But if you've got questions about specifically your transcript, your GPA, things like that, Ashley and I are welcome, it's mainly Ashley, to answer those questions directly for you. But I do want to point out, I'm going back to this slide, we do have more upcoming webinars. They won't be as long as this one. This one is the longest because it's covering so many aspects. But the next one we'll have in another 2 weeks will be about the MPSA, and we'll talk a little bit about those PhD collaborative degrees that we have in place with education and public health. And so we'll go into a little bit more about their capstones and just aspects that are a little bit more unique and specific for the MPSA. It still will cover some of the admissions and the numbers and the stats, but it's just going to be geared a little differently. And then I'll do exactly that same thing with MIA and their programs the day after that. And then I'll go into the MIP, and I may try to end up getting one of our staff members from the DC program to come in on that September 24th. We'll see how that works. But definitely register for any of those that you want more details about. Like Matt will cover the career development and really go into about how we work with our students for the internship and the employment rates and funding and all kinds of things that we can help you through that professional development aspect. So definitely sign up for what you're interested in there. And then if you are coming up with several questions that you're always welcome to email or call Ashley and myself, but we're also going to start up what we're calling these Zoom Q&A hours. And we're just going to hold them from noon to 1 on certain days. And for instance, the one we'll have next Tuesday will just be myself and Ashley manning that and answering any questions that come up. So if you just log in and want to see us and ask us direct questions, we'll be there to offer advice. So be sure that you reach out to us. You can find those registrations for the first 4 already on our website under the recruitment events, under the admissions section. But remember, you can always reach out to us directly. We've got the phone number here, that 862-3476, area code 979. Ashley and I man that, and we'll be happy to answer questions. And then if you've got questions about the online EMPSA or the certificate programs, reach out to Bush School Online at tamu.edu, and their number is 866-988-2874, and they will be happy to advise you in those areas. So that having been said, we've hit our hour, and I want to thank you guys for attending. Be sure to check back on some of the other webinars that we will host and interact with us in any number of ways. And also want to remind you that if you are in the Bryan-College Station area, we are taking visitors. We'll just, socially distance and have a mask, but we're welcome to invite you over here and get a little bit of a tour if you want that. And we're also having open houses, 1 per month. So those are all also listed on the website. So thank you guys for having us, and check back for the transcripted part if you need to go back and replay any of this. So thank you so much. We'll end this at that point. Thank you guys.